Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with Sibelius's most embarrassing work. Oh, this is an easy call. Some of you challenged me to come up with one when we were talking about Mahler's most embarrassing work. But, the Sibelius isn't too difficult. There are a bunch of candidates. There's anything he wrote for the piano, almost, except for the, Kiliki and a few other things. And then there's, Sibelius was always looking for money. He was always short cash. And he enjoyed a very highfalutin lifestyle. He liked expensive cigars and liquor and women and whatnot. And so he was trying to, recreate the success of the Valse Triste, which he sold for a pittance to his publisher, and it made a fortune for his publisher, and he got not a nickel. So he wrote lots of Valse Triste knockoffs. And late in life, he composed things like the Suite Champêtre and the Suite Mignonne and things like that had little waltzy things in them too. And nothing took off. And his wife, she was so annoyed with all that stuff because she thought, you're Finland's greatest composer. You should be writing magnificent symphonies and huge patriotic thingies and all kinds of meaningful stuff. And here you are writing this crap. And, but none of that. I don't begrudge Sibelius an effort to make a living. I really don't. And I don't think we should get on his case for that purpose. The stuff that he wrote as ephemera, he believed was ephemeral. Embarrassing works have to be ones that are otherwise grand or significant, but that turn out to be, embarrassing. And in this case, there's one obvious choice. It's Scaramouche. Some of you suggested The Maiden in the Tower, his only opera, which is half an hour long. But no, it's only half an hour long, and it's charming and has a great bass drum part. So, who am I to complain about it? But Scaramouche, oh, what a disaster. Scaramouche, what is a Scaramouche? That's a good question. Oh, here it is, just so you know. Here's a Scaramouche, so you can spell it. And if you want to listen to it, which, you can. Some of the music's marvelous. It's Sibelius, but it's a disaster. Why is it a disaster? Well, because he originally got the commission around 1912, 1911, somewhere in there. And it was for what he thought was incidental music to a play to be given in Denmark, in Copenhagen. And he realized, to his horror later on, that he was supposed to write a full hour-length ballet pantomime, which he really didn't want to do. And he tried to get out of the contract. He couldn't get out of the contract, so he was stuck with it. And he wound up having to do the whole sucker. And it was a disaster at its first premiere because the plot was horrible, stupid scenario, ridiculous, absurd. But the music was very well received. People are very complimentary about the music. Of course, when everything else going on is just atrocious, then maybe that's the only thing you have to talk about. But Sibelius himself was quite pleased with how he'd managed to solve the problem of writing music for this farrago of nonsense. And, he should have been, because he did solve the problem of how to write music for this farrago of nonsense. The problem is that the solution makes the music completely unlivable or unworkable, aside from the farrago of nonsense. In short, it got entirely farragatized. It's just, how does it work separately? Not really. And what it does do, you don't care. Anyway, let me tell you the story of the ballet pantomime, and you'll know exactly where I'm coming from. I have it here. Wait a minute. We're jiggling. I'm sorry about that, but I have to get my device, my optical assistant device here. Yep, there it is. Magnifying glass. I'm reading the notes from this lovely Naxos recording featuring live Segastom. There's only 2 complete recordings of the whole thing. There's this one and the one in the BIS edition with, I think, Nimi Yarvi. They're both very good. This one's a little slower, but, it takes 64 to 71 minutes between these 2 performances, somewhere around there. So let's just go through it, shall we? And then you'll see what I mean. Then we can talk about the music and why it's Sibelius's most embarrassing work. Oh, my God. All right. As the curtain rises, a minuet is heard. A ball is underway, hosted by Leland, who stands watching the dancers, while Blondelaine, I always called her Barcelona for some reason, Blondelaine, his wife, complains that he never wants to dance with her. That's the plot. Mm-hmm. Sibelius comes up with marvelous music to depict bored aristocrats. It's a boring minuet. So there you go. Boring in the intentionally boring department. They now wants to dance with her. The music soon adopts a Spanish flavor. See, Barcelona, that's where that came from. With the inclusion of a bolero solo oboe supported by oscillating octaves of the strings. It's also boring. The music breaks off, leaving only an ominous timpani roll, after which a harsh discord announces the arrival of Scaramouche, a sinister, wandering, hunchbacked dwarf who plays the viola. Anyway, Leylon's solo flute and Scaramouche solo viola converse in a somewhat tense atmosphere created by tremolo's strings, and Leylon soon discovers that his mysterious guest is a musician. Well, duh, he's playing the viola. He, walks on playing a viola. Anyway, when asked if he would play, Scaramouche agrees, and after briefly tuning his viola, what does he do? Keep it in his pocket? It's okay. He and his fellow musicians continue with the bolero. He fixes his eyes on Blondelaine, and as he continues to play with increasing abandon, she throws herself into the dance, becoming more and more delirious. Leylon, embarrassed. See, there's the embarrassment. The plot even involves embarrassment. And Sibelius has to describe embarrassment. That makes it embarrassing. Get it? Embarrassed by this display, orders his servant to send Scaramouche out. After an awkward pause, the dwarf agrees to leave, and with a graceful waltz, the musicians revive the dancing of all the guests who have watched Blondelaine's wild dance with amazement. A servant announces that supper is served, but Blondelaine says she is feeling hot and will join the rest of the party shortly. In the following scene, she hears Scaramouche's viola calling her above a syncopated rhythm in the violins, and, as if in a trance, throws away the flowers she is carrying and runs away. Leylon finds the flowers and wonders where Blondelaine could be, at which point he is joined by several of the guests asking the same question. Scaramouche's viola is heard. Goddamn viola, right? How do you hear the viola everywhere? You hear a viola. It doesn't carry that far, right? Anyway, Scaramouche's viola is heard, and the guests start frantically searching for her, portrayed by a series of rising and falling phrases in the strings, and imitated by shorter ascending and descending chromatic phrases in the woodwind and horns. This is actually a very good description of what it is, unfortunately, which concludes Act 1. All right, so where are we? The music continues seamlessly into Act 2, opening with a chromatic pizzicato section in the upper strings to reflect Leylon's continued restlessness. He drinks wine with a friend who tells him that Blondelaine will never return. How much you want to bet long do you think that's going to last, right? Of course. As the friend puts on his coat to leave, it gets caught in his belt, and he asks Leylon for his dagger to cut himself free, placing the dagger on a table as he leaves. Prophetically, Leylon is left alone to contemplate his fate, though not for long, as a forte piano chord at the start of the next scene marks the reappearance of Blondelaine. There she comes, Barcelona. Her face pale, she walks slowly towards Leylon, who is initially delighted by her return, but then fearful as he looks more closely at her face and disheveled hair and clothes and everything else. She's disheveled. He asks her where she has been, but she makes no response. Eventually, he loses his patience with her, and Blondelaine explains that she does not know where she went. Now, alone, she looks at herself in the mirror and laughs nervously, accompanied by nightmarish music that would not be out of place in the context of a film. Scaramouche appears behind the door, Col Legno in the double basses. Yeah. And when she sees him in the reflection of the mirror, she screams and tries to flee from his grasp, but he is too strong. Seeing Leylon's dagger lying on the table, she kills him. Why not? And she kills him. Leylon enters, but does not see the dead body. Husband and wife are reunited, expressing their love for each other to impassioned string writing, and as he plays the piano, Blondelaine dances. However, the brief moment of happiness is short-lived, as Blondelaine is struck with horror when she hears Scaramouche calling her. Long, sustained dissonances in the woodwinds, clashing with Leylon's cheery piano music, which Leylon cannot hear. He can hear the piano music. He can't hear the long, sustained dissonances. So he can't hear it, and she asks her husband to play faster. She dances faster and faster, faster and faster and faster and faster. Rite of Spring thing here, you know what I mean? Or Electra, or one of those things. And working herself into a frenzy, she finally dances before the body of Scaramouche before dropping dead to the floor. I mean, good grief. So yeah, that's the problem. Now, Sibelius illustrated this with a score which is remarkably faithful to the nonsensicality of the tale. And what he did was he divided the orchestra into 3 bits. You've got onstage musicians who are, playing the party music. You've got the full orchestra, which is supporting the action. Then you've got solo cello, solo viola, and like solo flute, a little separate group for Scaramouche and his crew. And so the music has 3-dimensionality, which is quite splendid and makes no sense whatsoever to be that way away from the stage. I mean, you sort of wonder what is going on. There's a piano in it, and it's all over the place. And it must work very well if you want to see Scaramouche. Problem is, nobody wants to see Scaramouche. It's an embarrassing story about embarrassing people doing embarrassing things, for which Sibelius wrote embarrassing music. And that's the point. I have it. You can hear it. You may like it. Nobody cares if you like it or don't like it. Remember with these things, and I keep having to say this isn't about whether you like it or not. Something can be embarrassing and you can love it. I love all kinds of embarrassing things. It's fine to like it, but that's beside the point. The question is, musically, what is this about? And what this is about is something that's absolutely absurd. Now, some of you have used the generic argument that, all opera libretti are stupid or all ballet things are stupid. Well, yes, they are, but some are more stupid than others. And some, no matter how stupid they are enormously popular because the music somehow sells the stupidity and we accept it and we're not embarrassed. This doesn't. I'm telling you, it doesn't. But you may disagree, and that's fine too. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.